Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our featured fight for UFC Vancouver. In this matchup, we have Marlon Chito Vera taking on Aiemann Zahabi. I know I'm late to the joke, but I couldn't resist. Vera is 23, 10, and 1 as a professional, 2 and 3 in his last 5 fights. Meanwhile, Zahabi is 13 and 2 as a professional, 5 and 0 in his last 5 fights, currently riding a 6 fight win streak, meaning he has roughly the third longest win streak of all active bantamweights. Looking at Vera's last 5, his latest win was his head kick KO win to Dominic Cruz. Then he lost to Corey Sandhagen, who's just out, was clearly a level above. I still don't understand how it was a split decision, but whatever. His last win was to Pedro Munoz back at UFC 292. And then now most recently, Vera is on a 2-fight skid. Both of those fights last year, losing dominantly to Sean O'Malley at UFC 299, and then most recently losing to Davison Figueiredo last August. Meanwhile, for Zahabi, as I said, he's riding currently a 6-fight win streak. Now, of those 5 recent ones, those are wins to Ricky Tercios, Orichi Lang, Jafid Basharat, Pedro Munoz, and in easily his biggest win of his career, Jose Aldo. Looking at this fight, I don't want to break it down. I would say that these two are pretty well-rounded. I'd say Vera is the more dangerous submission artist of the two, while Aiemann Zahabi is the better active volume striker of the two. I guess better to say what each of their individual skill sets are. For Vera, at this point in his career, his style is pretty well known. In his more or less prime, it's hard to say if Chito is washed, but he has not been looking the same. But Vera is one of the more dangerous counter strikers in the division. Keeps a pretty good long guard, active guard as well, good micro head movement, and dangerous with all of his 8 limbs, from his crushing knees to his kicks. I mean, shoot. Look at his 2 knockouts of Frankie Edgar and Dominic Cruz. That front kick KO to Edgar back at UFC 286. No, I take that back. 268. That's it. When he knocked out Frankie Edgar at MSG. And then the head kick KO to Dominic Cruz, which is now over 3 years ago. Vera is very good at getting his timings and then landing just the perfect strike on his opposition. The thing about his style, though, is that it's very, very low volume. You look at, I was thinking specifically his win over Rob Font, where on numbers-wise, Rob Font outstruck Chito in just about every round. But Chito had the equalizer, that being his power, and hurt Font in just about every single round. Dropped him in just about every round as well, and that's how he won the decision. Now, as for his grappling, Chito's grappling is pretty underrated. He actually started out as more of a submission artist in the South American scene. But then as time grew on, his striking started getting better, and he was better at placing counter shots. Plus, he has one of the best chins I've ever seen. I mean, the knee he took to Sean O'Malley was so devastating. I'm never going to forget how when O'Malley landed the knee on Chito's face, it sounded like a fucking bat hit him in the face. I'm never going to forget that. And you know what? He was still fighting at the end of the day. So that just says the level of durability. Now, he did get dropped for the first time in his career against Figgy. And that is a bit concerning, as Vera has taken a lot of damage over the years. Problem with Vera's style is, like I said, most fighters are usually able to outstrike him, as, especially now, Vera always kind of relies on his power. I mean, he definitely has one of the best power strikers in the bantamweight division, for sure. But the problem is, I think he just relies on it way too much, and often just waits too long to line up the perfect shot. That does not work at the elite level, where fighters are too defensively responsible and just too smart to fall for that kind of trap. Now, against lower level opposition, sure, it works, especially if they make a mistake. But you got to think, like, for example, the Pedro Munoz fight, where, granted, I don't know what the commentary was thinking, where it looked like Munoz was more or less ahead, just being the more active fighter. It's just Vera hurt him more often than Munoz hurt him. It's interesting because just about everything about Chito's like just screams crazy durability, from taking all the leg kicks he has, body damage, to how many hits in the face. I mean, he's fought some of the best strikers at bantamweight, from Jose Aldo, John Lineker, Sandhagen, Song Yadong, Rob Font, Sean O'Malley, blah blah blah. He's fought such great strikers, and only one of them has ever dropped him. And most of the time, he doesn't actually look damaged. Like, I very rarely have seen that man look cut, bloodied, or bruised at all. Now, granted, Sean O'Malley, he looked fucked up and looked like he got stung by a swarm of bees. But I think that's more so a testament to how much power Sean O'Malley actually has than most people think he does. The problem is, and I don't know, the biggest thing I've noticed, especially when thinking about this fight, is just the runt Chito is on. Now, losing to two former champions, no shame in it. But they both kind of dominated him more or less throughout their fight. Now, I know he won a round against Figueiredo, but it's just kind of frustrating to watch him fight. It seems Chito's been fighting, scared's not the right word, tentative. Now, I don't know what it is. Either all this pain is starting to get to him, he might be overtraining, or, just fighting, Fighting sucks sometimes, and no matter how tough you are, your body's always going to leave a little more damage than it did before. And maybe it's finally just catching up to him. Maybe he's just doesn't want to absorb too much punishment anymore, and fights just so much more tentative. Because I'm thinking if Chito fought with much more aggression, I think he'd win a lot more of his fights. But that being said, let me talk about Aiemann Zahabi. Now, Aiemann Zahabi, who is the brother of Firas Zahabi, and I'm sure if you know who that is, that was GSP's coach for many years. He fights kind of like all of those fighters in TriStar MMA in Canada. Very good, well-rounded mixed martial artist. Very high-volume striker. Really good defensive and offensive wrestling, as well as same with his jiu-jitsu, good offense and good defense. I'd say Aiemann Zahabi is also a very good technical fighter. He fights all of his opposition very differently. For example, watch his Pedro Munoz fight and then watch his Jose Aldo fight. For his Pedro Munoz fight, Zahabi was mostly on his bicycle, more or less, and just picking well-timed boxing combinations or just single shots against Munoz, who was fighting much more aggressively, although oddly enough wasn't going for his calf kicks, but mostly just tried to box with Aiemann Zahabi. And Zahabi was just a sharper boxer, more elusive, and picked his shots much better than Munoz. Then you look at the Jose Aldo performance, which was at UFC 315. Now, I know some people do believe Aldo won, or majority of people. I didn't, but you looked at how Zahabi fought. It was much different than Pedro Munoz, in my opinion. He just weathered the early storm, let Aldo gas himself, and then started really putting it on him, especially into the second round, and especially in the third round, even after taking a soccer kick to the face by Aldo when he was standing up, Zahabi standing up. I'd say overall, what I really love about Zahabi is his volume striking. He's very good at mixing his combinations into the head, going for the body, back to the head again. It's never one shot out and that's it for Zahabi, which I think is I feel like that's like one of the new metas. I feel like in MMA, like these volume strikers are winning for reasons because one, the activity looks good to the judges. Two, if if they find an opponent who's more or less one or two strikes, and then you come back with 3 or 4, that looks much better optical wise to judges, and I think to most of the media who judge also fights. Just because if you're the more active fighter and you're keeping much more busy and your opposition more or less having mostly to defend instead of firing that 1 or 2 shot they think is going to land, then I just feel like that really ups the activity, and 2, increases your chances of winning the round. And Zahabi is also very good at mixing his martial arts. Now, he's mostly more so a striker than he is a grappler, I will say that. As you look at, say, his Jafid Basharat performance, where he mostly just used his striking against a fighter who, on paper anyway, should have been the more technical of the two. Now, There is a concern for Zahabi. He is 38, and that is pretty old at the bantamweight division. But I gotta say, he still looks pretty primed and fresh. He's got really good cardio. He has gone a hard 15 minutes before. And while he doesn't always win by knockout, he does have some good power in that right hand of his, especially when he's able to line it up to the chin. Now, how these two meet in the middle is going to be interesting. I honestly think Zahabi has a tailor-made style to beat Chito Vera. If you notice, a lot of volume strikers who fight Chito are very good at putting Chito on the back foot and keeping his guard occupied to where he's not able to fire off the strikes Chito wants to. And even when he does, usually the fighter is either A, out of range, or 2, defensively responsible enough to either slip and move or block. Not to mention, if Zahabi can mix in his takedowns as well, Chito doesn't have the best takedown defense. I think that will also help Zahabi a lot. Now, Chito does have a very active guard. He does have good submissions to him, and he is still dangerous everywhere. He's got power in all of his limbs, and I can see a well-placed up kick really messing up Zahabi if he's not careful. But honestly, I just feel like Zahabi just has the tailor-made style for Chito. His volume striking is going to keep Chito occupied, and this version of Chito has just not been performing to the level he did when he was specifically on that 3-fight run with the Rob Font, Edgar, and Cruz performance, where not only was able to blend good defensive movement and an overall good striking defense, but also just blast his opponents in with pinpoint accuracy. It just feels like Chito just is too. I hate trying to say the word scared because I don't want to disrespect the fighter by saying that. So I just prefer to use the word tentative. It just feels like Chito's so tentative to pull the trigger anymore and expose himself to getting hit. That's what I feel like. Odds-wise, it's pretty close, and I understand it. It too, Chito is still the younger fighter and has the fight-ending power. But for the odds exactly, plus 110 for Vera, minus 130 for Zahabi. Also looking at their physical stats, both are the same height, 5'8". Chito is going to have the longer reach at 70.5 inches to Zahabi's 68.5, so about a 2-inch reach advantage. But I think a lot of what this comes down to is the game plan of Aiemann Zahabi. And I truly believe Zahabi is going to be able to close the distance on Vera, land a lot of good punching combinations, keep Chito on an active guard, and never really let him get out of first gear. Because if you notice, another thing about Chito is he is a slow starter. That's always been a big criticism of his. And he really does have a style set for 5 rounds, as after usually the third, entering the 4th round, Chito usually has his opponent's reads at this point and is able to find his openings. But either A, in a 3-round fight, that's a very tough thing to do, as slow starters usually lose the first round, and then they have to get the next 2 rounds, or else they lose the decision, or just lose or get finished. But another thing about it, if a striker like, say, Corey Sandhagen can give Vera too many reads, either it be his different striking combinations, different weapons on the feet, and or just mixing in his takedowns, oftentimes what's going to happen is Vera is going to have too much stuff to try and read and try and dissect or anticipate. So I feel like if Zahabi really just not only is on the front foot in this fight, keeping up the pressure, of course, not coming recklessly, and at times go on the back foot to avoid some of the devastating counters of Marlon Vera, but also just keep in mixing his martial arts, do the combination striking, shoot for a double leg, combination striking, shoot for a single, abandon it, go for the striking again. I just feel like he's going to be able to overwhelm Vera for vast majorities of this fight. Now, of course, like I said, there is a concern where Zahabi could be up on the scorecards or up on significant strikes or something akin to that, but Vera has the bigger moments and is able to hurt him more. That is definitely a possibility, but with only 3 rounds to work instead of 5 rounds to work, I think that greatly favors Aiemann Zahabi. So my official prediction, I'm going to go with Aiemann Zahabi, and I'm going to pick him via decision. I don't see him finishing Marlon Vera. If some great finishers like Song Yadong, Sandhagen, O'Malley, and Figueiredo can't finish him, and he's still durable enough to only get dropped once in his career, I think Zahabi is not going to be the fighter to finish or be the first fighter to finish Vera, but I do believe he's going to win the decision. So officially again, I'm going to go Aiemann Zahabi, and I'm going to pick him via decision. But with that being said, that's been my breakdown of our featured fight. If you liked the video, comment and subscribe. I'd like to hear your thoughts. How do you think Zahabi will do? Do you think he's going to put himself into the title picture with that? Or does he need one more win? Meanwhile, for Vera, do you give Vera a good chance in this fight? Do you think he can pull off the upset? Or do you think that Vera might be washed at this point? I'd love to hear your opinions and what you have to say in the comments. Next up, we'll have our co-main event, Kevin Holland taking on Mike Malott. But until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. Take care.